Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Phil Ike, and joining me for a very special conversation is Josh Prusik. He's the Economic Vitality Specialist with Michigan Main Street. Good afternoon, Josh.
Good afternoon, Phil. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you because we're talking about all the services that Michigan Main Street provides to their communities. And the services we're going to talk about today are so important because so many of our communities want change, and we use the word transformation a lot. And they have a goal set for where they want to be in the future. But in order to get there, you got to know who you are as a community right now. And that takes data, and that takes information and all sorts of nitty-gritty details, because you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're at right now. So we're going to talk today about the Market Snapshot and the Ready to Recruit. Let's take Market Snapshot first. Give me a quick 101 of what exactly the Market Snapshot is.
Sure. Well, Phil, as you know, with working with many Michigan Main Street communities by now, our team really focuses on elevating local priorities, working with the assets that are within a community. So the Market Snapshot is kind of a comprehensive overview and a look in time at who the demographics are of a certain community, what their spending habits are, what their household incomes are to support new businesses or existing businesses, and really distills that down into a couple pages so that the downtown director or businesses in the area or entrepreneurs can understand what kind of market they're entering with a new business and how successful that business might be.
Mm-hmm. I think this is such an important information. You cruise a Facebook page of any community Facebook group, and people are constantly saying, like, we need this or we want this. And while that can be an insight as to what the community needs, what I love about this is it gives insight as to what a community could potentially have. And That's so critical in determining the next feasible and important step for a community.
Well, and it's so important for local communities, especially these economic development contexts like your downtown directors, to have access to this information, because your big box stores, your chain restaurants, they already have this data. So they know when they're opening a store, how much of that market they can capture from the community. Your entrepreneurs usually don't have access to that same data. They're starting with a great idea, but they don't know what the annual spending of restaurants looks like within a 5, 15, 30-minute drive time radius. So this gives us kind of an understanding, an idea of how successful that business could properly be, as long as it has a successful strategy and good community support, how many sales they can actually capture over the course of a year.
Oh, very cool. Okay, you could almost consider it like leveling the playing field between local businesses and these huge national changes. There's a reason why that chain sandwich shop built a building on the corner of that road. It's not just because they were guessing. It's not just because they just really like the vibe of the community. Although that's one element, they've done the math, and they've done super computer level math. And so it sounds like the information that you provide can potentially say, hey, communities, if you want to embrace your local sandwich shop, you can absolutely do that, because here's some information that says this could be a great market for them.
Absolutely, Phil. That strategy that these big box stores already have, they're crunching numbers, like you said, and they've got this data, and they know that their business strategy works. So they're moving into a community knowing they can capture those sales. It's our job to empower the downtown districts to be able to do that same amount of work and support their small business ecosystems, showing this data and backing up those kind of intuitions the community might have. We run pulse poll data in all of our communities, asking people what kinds of restaurants you want to see, what kind of retail would you like to see. And this Market Snapshot is really the data that can also help paint another part of that picture, showing that people want this kind of business and they're right that there is untapped spending here, and that an entrepreneur could take up an idea and run with it.
I'm thinking of an example of a community that I've done stories for Michigan Main Street on before, Niles. Thinking back to the beginning of Niles and their relationship with Michigan Main Street 20 years ago, did the community poll. They said, we need more places to eat. And that informed the next step of creating this incubator and really for food-based services and really cultivating that scene in Niles. And lo and behold, you've got this beautiful little small town of Niles having artisan pizza next to pastries you can't get outside of Nevada. It's really incredible. And now moving on to like retail, do you have any other examples of communities that have kind of benefited from this market snapshot?
Well, we run these market snapshots every 3 years for all of our selected master level Main Street communities. So it's a tool that
Very
they
cool.
always have to run with. A recent example of work that we've used for these, we held a developer day in downtown Everett, trying to get some investment in some of their vacant buildings. And one of the things that their director Todd did was he took these kind of drive time maps and the market surplus and leakage data and blew them up on large poster boards so that when you were bringing all of these developers into the community, they could also see, hey, if we're looking for a tenant, a sandwich shop might be a great fit, or a restaurant might be a great fit, or a dry goods store would have a lot of success in this community based on the spending that our people in this community are doing outside of the community. So really just
Mm.
trying to be that downtown matchmaker in a lot of ways, and pave the way for success.
The downtown matchmaker, which I love, but also what is so impressive to me is that a lot of times in our communities we have this issue, like vacant properties. I mean, Everett is an example of 1,000 different examples, not just in the state of Michigan, but all across the country of we have this situation where we're a great community. We need more people in these buildings. And what communities often fall in the trap of doing is just kind of hanging out and waiting for a developer to finally take a shine to them and descend from the heavens and say, I will help you restore these buildings to all of their glory. And it just doesn't happen. It just kind of sitting around waiting for redevelopment to happen and for the right people to take ownership of the right buildings. I mean, if it happens, it could be a multi-decade process.
Mm-hmm.
But here you're having a developer day and you're inviting developers in and you're really being intentional about going out and getting the help of these people that these communities need. And I really love that it's proactive. Communities might want to be proactive, but they might not have the information or even know what kind of information to provide developers. But here you are with a market snapshot saying, let's go out and find those developers as opposed to just hoping that they'll find us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what we do is meant for that incremental success. Um, and these market snapshots are just part of that broader, economic development ecosystem, or you could even call it economic gardening, right? We're kind of planting the seeds in this community for success, and we're ensuring that they have the infrastructure to grow into sustainable investments.
Oh, love it. So the kind of the another step or another layer to this service is the ready to recruit. So give me the 101 of that service.
Yeah, we work with Jay Schlinzog out of Downtown Professionals Network, who also compiles our market snapshots for us. But working with Jay, we've got what we call the Ready to Recruit Primer, which is really for communities that are newer into the Main Street program. So they have those initial recruitment pieces ready to go for new businesses, as well as an understanding of their district. So while in the Ready to Recruit Primer, they'll go through a downtown building and business inventory so that they know who their building owners are, who their business owners are, and really get an understanding of that district. That also allows them to identify those vacant spaces or spaces that are underutilized for investment. Maybe a service business is in there that isn't really occupying or using the full space. There could be room for restaurant or retail. We want them to know kind of where those spots are in the community so that when investment does come into their office, they know kind of where to guide that conversation. So through Ready to Recruit, we work with not only just the downtown director, but also a local team of folks, usually the economic vitality team, business owners, members of the downtown board. They can really steer the conversation and develop those pieces for potential business owners.
Mm. This really goes back to this idea of if you want to transform and improve your community, you got to know what you're working with right now. And I would imagine that there are many communities here in Michigan that either because of capacity or whatever reason, just they kind of sort of know what buildings might be vacant, or they kind of have an idea of what kind of businesses um, they could recruit or things like that. But if you don't have that actual hard information in front of you, you might be barking up the wrong tree. You might be saying, "Hey, we need X, Y, and Z," when you need A, B, and C first. And so I love this idea of that it even with communities with limited capacity, it really says, "Hey, we can give you all of this information that you really need to know in order to take those next steps." You might only have two buildings that are vacant, and on this entire time that you're like, "Oh man, vacancy is our issue," and you might be chasing the wrong issue. And so that just this information, I think, is just so important.
Yeah, I think like anything else, intentionality drives action, right? Like you're going to have
Mhm.
investment that's going to come knocking on the doors to your community at some point. All the better if you can kind of guide them to something that fits not only your local priorities and what the citizens in your community want to see succeed. And this is a really
Mhm.
great way to kind of frame them up for, again, success and also kind of closing gaps in that small business entrepreneur ecosystem, because it's not easy to start small businesses and there's a lot of barriers that are in that process that we don't immediately recognize by no fault of anybody in particular. But
Mhm.
Ready to Recruit is a really nice way for downtown districts to look at that full entrepreneur kind of process and start breaking down those barriers and start compiling information all in one central location, so that when somebody wants to open up a business, you can kind of hold their hand and guide them and be a partner in that process.
There's a lot of parallels to this and the conversations that we're having with RRC, in that if a developer is really interested in your community, like, you got to put on that suit, you got to dress to impress, you got to give them what they need to know in a compelling way, you got to make it easy for them, you got to roll out that red carpet so that they have a higher chance of actually helping your community. And similar to RRC and saying, "Hey, let's take a look at your zoning ordinances and make them, let's modernize them. Let's get get a website together where people can go and easily find the information that they're looking for." All of that stacks the deck in your favor. And it sounds like it's a similar thing here too, is that with Ready to Recruit, let's stack this deck so that you're as ready for these new businesses as you possibly can be, because sometimes you only get one shot. And if they walk into your community and say, "Hey, I'm ready to start this thing," and you can give them all the information that they need to say, "Hey, we are ready to work with you," that becomes a hard community to turn down, especially if you compare it to another community where you've got to constantly call city hall and you don't know where to find the thing and the email never made it over. It sounds like you're building a compelling case for somebody to say, "Hey, I want to invest in this community."
Absolutely. Yeah, really. I mean, the goal of Ready to Recruit is to prime that local community for that investment. And as much as it is for kind of outside investors and developers, it's also so that you can help the people that are already in your community continue to invest and continue to grow within their community, because they've got as much of a right to that as anybody else. And the only way to
Yeah.
really do that is by having that point person and those systems in place to help navigate that so it's as easy as possible for them to succeed.
Kind of going back to one of the first conversations we published with Ben Mulcho, where he talked about um, how the brand is like your reputation and things that you want to be known for, and within a community, what does the prospective citizens have of your community? Are you conducive and supportive to small businesses, or is the reputation of, well, we kind of make things harder than they need to be? And having something like Ready to Recruit really, I think, sends a message to your citizens that say, "Hey, if you want to dig your roots even deeper, you want to contribute as a new business owner, we're here to support you and we're going to help you be successful," and that's a win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, "Oh, this sounds really nice. This sounds like something that we need. How do I get more information about Michigan Main Street and becoming part of this really incredible program, Josh?"
Well, I think anybody's first stop is myplace.org. That is kind of your central hub for all of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's technical assistance programs, including the Michigan Main Street program. And from there, you can also find contact information for all of us on our team, as well as examples of other work that we do.
Beautiful. So head over to myplace.org, people. Explore, get a lay of the land. It's gonna blow your mind. There's so much good stuff there. And I'm gonna tell you, audience, from working at a national level, Michigan Main Street program is really leading the charge in terms of main streets and developing and being innovative and trying to help communities. They're at the front of the pack with so many other great state leaders. So please do not hesitate to head over to that website, check out Michigan Main Street, and then send them an email about how to get involved. Josh Prusik, I want to thank you for your time today, but more importantly, all the work that you're putting into our Michigan communities. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Phil.